Cup. Very nice to be here with you. As you just heard, I'm responsible for the product management of the BMW i brand, which is actually the newest brand of the BMW Group. We founded it in 2013, and it caters around, I would say, innovation and future mobility needs. And you know, I always do one thing when I arrive in a new country. So when I arrive in a new country at the airport and I go to the city center in a car, I always try to spot and count how many electric vehicles do I actually see on the street. What is your guess when I flew in yesterday at the airport, how many vehicles, only electrically driven, did I see until going to my hotel here in the city center? Any ideas? 100? Nobody? 100? I would have loved to see 100. And actually, I did see 2, which is, I think, at the good figure. I don't tell you the brands. Unfortunately, it weren't none of ours. But nonetheless, the question is 2 electric vehicles. And I'm standing here and talking about electromobility. So you could say, well, you talk about the future that actually doesn't seem to have arrived so far. I see it a little bit differently, and I want to go back a little bit into the past to tell you why I think the future is actually already here. And the past goes like this. Did you know that in 1885, so quite a long time from now, there was an invention made by a German guy called Gottlieb Daimler? It's always hard to tell about the competition, but he invented something like the combustion-driven engine car, which was, I would say, one of the most important inventions of the last century. And now you probably make something like a time warp, and we are in a city like New York, and it's the year 1910. In 1910, New York was already a rising capital, and people were really progressive and modern. Do you know what the streets in New York in 1910 did look like? Well, actually, there were horse-driven coaches. Even if the combustion-driven engine in the car was already invented, 30 years later, people were still driving around mostly in horses and coaches. But then something really interestingly happened. In 1913, a guy named Ford invented the Ford Model T and brought this thing into mass production. And if you now Google New York 2023, so a mere 10 years later, you won't see any more coaches and horses in New York. It was only cars. Why am I telling you this? Because my sincere feeling is we are currently in what I'm calling the tip of what we call an iconic change. So yes, it's true. Currently, you still have the feeling that electromobility is probably not on the streets yet. But actually, if you look at the growth rates, and I think Christian already showed you the ones in Thailand, those are growth rates that are really pretty impressive. Another probably good example from my point is how you can make this change more visible. And I brought this picture to you to probably give you an example of what I see that could be like change. Anybody an idea what this change is or what this picture is showing? I give you a hint. Actually, it's a country. And this country is Norway in the northern part of Europe. And I think most of you know why I actually am citing Norway here. Because something similar to what I just mentioned with New York in the 1900s is just happening as we speak in Norway. A couple of years ago, actually in 2014, so only 4 years ago, Norway seemed to be a country like every other country else. People were mostly driving diesel engines or petrol-driven engines, and the electricity wasn't too much of a deal. But if you look in 2017, already the picture has dramatically changed. If you now go into Norway, every second car is already powered electrically. So this country, within a time frame that is less than 10 years, radically changed the way they're seeing and using mobility. The question is, of course, what is doing Norway different probably than the rest of the world? Well, there isn't something like the role model how you can change. What the Norwegians probably did right was 3 things that come together. The first thing is you need something like a government that truly believes in the future and supports. The support doesn't need to be necessarily incentives, but it could be something like done in Norway. You get something like, I would say, a tax reduction That is one thing, but the second thing is you have free parking in Norway with electric vehicles, you have free road usage, you even have free ferry usage with this. So people are really, I would say, more likely to use electric vehicles. The second thing is you, of course, need an infrastructure that is able to give you as customers the choice to really make those cars reloaded again. And the third thing is, and I think is the most important one, actually people need to want to make the step and drive these cars. And I think this is the most important thing. And I actually want to ask you, how many of you have already driven an electric car? It's quite a lot, but still too few, because actually driving an electric car is completely the same like driving a car you're knowing today. So there is no thing you need to learn, you need to change. Basically, it's just a car. And if you're driving a BMW electric car, I can promise you standing here, it feels and drives like a BMW. So sheer driving pleasure is, of course, in our electric cars as well. I would even be a little bit, I would say, progressive. I say, for me, it's the future of sheer driving pleasure. Because these cars, at some points, really accelerate a little bit more. So anybody of you who has not had the chance yet to drive an electric car, please just try and you will find out why I am so excited about this future. It's not only me who is excited about this future, it's the entire company. What you're seeing behind me is the so-called four-cylinder building in Munich. This is like the headquarters. This is the center of power of the BMW Group. And as the name implies, it's basically a four-cylinder. So it's the depiction of something like a combustion-driven engine. But last year in 2017, we were already able to sell 100,000 all-electric BMW cars. And we were so proud about this that we made this four-cylinder look like 4 batteries, actually. And I think this was one of the most strongest signals that you could actually send how severe and sincerely we think about this future is going to happen. Just to give you a few figures, we sold in 2017 already 100,000 electric cars. This year, our expectation is to sell about 140,000 cars, so the number is currently rising. But I think the most really exciting number is in a mere 7 years to go into the future, in 2025, the BMW Group, with all its 3 brands, Rolls-Royce, Mini, and BMW, expects to have a market share of 15 to 25% with only solitary electrically driven cars. So it means when you go to the 25% share, every 4th vehicle that the BMW Group sells in 2025 is expected to be electrically driven. So this is what I call is really a change that we are going to see in the future. But we are already doing quite well today. If you, for example, look at the market shares of our currently electrically driven car, the i3 and the i3 S Sports model, and if you take all electric cars that are sold on the planet, and it's not only the base and the premium segment, you take every car. So you take probably small electrical cars that are sold solitary in China as well, and then you calculate something like a market share. You get an amazing number for our BMW i3 because each 9th vehicle that has an electric drivetrain today on this world is actually a BMW i3. So yes, the overall total number of those car sales are still small, but the growth rates and actually the market performance with the BMW brand is really, really amazing. And if you take all those cars that we have sold until today, and you combine the kilometers that have been driven electrically with these cars, you get an amazing number with lots and lots of zeros behind it, 1.9 billion kilometers that have been solitarily driven electric. It's a number with lots and lots of zeros, so it's easier to remember. This is a number which means that you could have driven around the Earth about 50,000 times only going electric. But the more impressive and even more important number is, of course, by driving electrically with this kind of cars, we until now did save the planet over 230,000 tons of CO2 that have not been emitted by just driving an electric car. And I think this is a part of the future that we actually should all be looking forward to, because we all know good air quality is something like a cornerstone of life. And everybody who has been in a huge, I would say, city with bad air, we all know it needs to change, and electromobility definitely is one way to go there. I think most of the governments, of course, have seen this fact as well. And the curves you're seeing here is something like the CO2 regulation. And this is not a prognosis or a forecast. This actually is going to happen in the way we see it here for these three nations, China, US, and the European Union. And especially in the European Union, the blue line, you see it's getting, I would say, really, really severe in the foreseeable future. So in 2025, in 7 years from now, the overall CO2 emissions that are allowed for a car company in Europe are slightly above 80 grams of CO2 that are allowed per car. So this means the BMW Group, with all its brands, and an average, then should only emit something like a little bit more than 80 grams of CO2. This is why it's of course not surprising that we already now set our strategy into this future, and what I just told you with the 25 cars that will be fully electrically driven that were going to be offered until 2025 by the BMW Group. Let me tell you a little bit more about this future strategy, because the BMW Group was one of the first car companies who actually ventured into this new era and brought something like electromobility to the streets. We launched the i3 and the i8 already in 2013. Then we took this, I would say, technology. So BMW for us is always something like an incubator or a piloting thing, where we try out new technologies. And we bring them then, if we know it's working, into the series as well. So you know the plug-in hybrids, they all have this intelligence or this knowledge of BMW i in their drivetrains as well. Or if you look at this electrically driven scooter here, of course it has the same knowledge and innovation that we learned with this first wave of electrification already in there as well. But the question is, how does the future look like? Because we just learned in the future we need lots and lots more of these electrified cars. The BMW Group needs to be scalable and flexible when it comes to electromobility. Well, this is why I'm really happy to pronounce that this actually, I would say, challenge, that the future, of course, holds something like an uncertainty, because nobody can tell you exactly on a, I would say, country base, how is this share between combustion-driven engines, plug-in hybrids, and BEVs really going to look into the future. You need to be really agile and flexible as a company to cope with this, I would say, different expected market shares in the future. And this is why we bring you something like, we call it a new flexible architecture. It's developed in the moment we are speaking, and we will bring it to the BMW Group in the beginning of the 2020 years. And this is really, I would say, an outstanding architecture. Architecture is the base platform where we build our cars on. What we are currently doing is we have separate platforms for combustion-driven engines and for electric cars. But we said in the future we need to be more flexible. So we said we actually need one platform that is able to have 3 different drivetrains in them. So this new platform will be able, on the very, very same architecture, to change between combustion-driven engines, plug-in hybrids, and fully electric cars. You, of course, all see, I would see the benefits of this. It's reducing the variance, it's more cost-effective, and we are really flexible to cater to the needs of different markets. So one market, for example, is really going into the direction to only demanding purely electric cars. We easily can cater to this need by this very new platform. This really new platform, of course, has then the newest, we call it already generation 5 of our battery technology. And what you see here, range anxiety. So the anxiety to not have enough, I would say, of driving range in an electric car is already in 2 to 3 years something of the past. Because the battery technology is advancing in a way that I would say the entry level of battery range is then something about 450 kilometers. But you can, if you wish so, go up to, I would say, 700, 750 kilometers range with the new batteries we will be able to offer then. That this is really working and already looking good, we demonstrated with 2 concept cars. The first one on the here right-hand side, a sedan or Grand Coupe-shaped car, is the so-called i4 concept, which was shown at the Frankfurt Motor Show already last year. And this year we brought the second car from this new to expected architecture. It's the iX3 concept, which was demonstrated in Beijing. And I think you all agree, hopefully, that those cars, I would say, progressively shaped BMW cars. They all have, of course, the BMW logo on the hood. And every car that bears the BMW logo on the hood has a BMW heart inside. So those cars will drive and feel like true, authentic BMW cars. It's sheer driving pleasure, just on a new level. And you see probably a little bit from the design. From my point of view, it's a futuristic design. For example, of course, they still have the kidney, but as an electric drivetrain doesn't need that much air intake, it makes sense for the efficiency to really close the kidneys as well. Nonetheless, from my point of view, those look like truly authentic and beautifully designed BMW cars, and you can look to a lot more of them, because until 2025, we will bring 12 fully electric BMW cars and 13 plug-in hybrid cars that bears this new technology. This is the outlook of what I just mentioned with the 25 new models. But we all know it's not only about the models. It's a little bit like chicken and egg. If you have a car, but you don't have the infrastructure to recharge the car, it's probably not going to work. This is why we already in 2013, when we launched the i3, we set up a different program, and it's called the Charge Now program, and we said we need to bring it all together. So for us, it's always something like a 360-degree circle. The car is probably one part of the circle, but it's not a solitary part. So we, of course, started thinking about what can we as a BMW Group do to actually give customers the best solution when it comes to charging. And charging is not the only thing, but probably something like we have the Drive Now car sharing theme. So sometimes probably it's not only about owning a car, but sharing a car with other people as well. And you need to probably think about a little bit more bold and flexible when it comes to infrastructure. I sometimes talk with mayors of bigger cities, and they ask me, what can we do as a city to really help this change to arrive in our cities? We want to improve our air quality, but actually we just don't know where to place any more electric chargers. We don't have the space. And I always tell them, look, actually it's already there. We have it everywhere on the streets. These things are called street lamps. And you know, they are all powered by electricity. Why don't you just exchange them with something we invented? It's called a street charger. So every street lamp becomes something like a charger. So every time a car is parked at a curb, basically you could plug it in the future and you get electricity. So this is why I'm just showcasing here, you need probably to have more future-proof solutions to really make this change happen, but it's not impossible, in the contrary. Another thing that we are working on together with a couple of different other manufacturers, because we think this all needs to go together on, I would say, higher level. It doesn't make sense if only one brand is doing something like a supercharger network, because in the future it needs to be in the same way. If you go to a gas station today, it doesn't matter what brand or car you drive, you just want to refuel it or recharge it, and this is only going to happen if all the car manufacturers work together. And what we are currently piloting is something like a supercharger network all over Europe at the so-called highways or Autobahn. And this network will be able to recharge electric cars at a speed of over 350 kilowatts. This is a lot of power that goes into a battery. If you compare what we are offering today, it's 50 kilowatts, or this named competition here is offering 120 kilowatts. This is the triple number that we are going to offer in the foreseeable future. And with these kind of superchargers, you will be able to, even a battery, I would say, in the ranges I just mentioned a couple of minutes ago, to recharge in something like between 20 and 30 minutes, so that you easily can then drive more than, I would say, 300 to 350 kilometers. So the electric car will definitely become something like a first household choice. It looks like a normal car, it drives like a normal car, and gives you all the freedom that you're already today used from your cars. Christian just mentioned it's more than, of course, just the electricity in the ACES strategy we're having. There are more letters, and one letter that I want to emphasize a little bit more on, because BMW I is not only standing for electric cars, it's standing for visionary mobility. And one thing that really will change visionary mobility, or the way we move, is autonomous driving. And the first question always probably is, BMW is sheer driving pleasure. And then there's autonomous driving. So actually, it sounds a little bit like this could not go together, because sheer driving pleasure and autonomous driving doesn't sound like a fit. Well, actually, I see it completely the other way around. I think autonomous driving is the biggest chance we as a BMW Group actually have, because it brings sheer driving pleasure on a completely new level. Let me explain what I mean by this. Imagine a situation like probably you're in a holiday, your wife is sitting next to you, you're driving a beautiful convertible, and you're somewhere at the coast of France, it's a windy road, and that's the sunset, and you all get a picture. At these situations, of course, you want to drive by yourself. At least I would like to drive by myself. And this won't go away in 20 years. I want to hold the wheel, and I want to experience my BMW. But then again, there's probably something like a situation if you go outside here. It's a complete mess, the streets are crowded, it's a traffic jam. You actually are sitting in the car, you know your phone is going crazy, you need to make some calls, you probably need to do some shopping, and you're holding the wheel and you don't feel sheer driving pleasure because you just can't. In this moment, if you push the button, the car takes over and gives you the freedom to do something else with your time, to probably call somebody, make a video chat, or do some shopping. Wouldn't it be a different kind of sheer driving pleasure, but still it's a joy of driving because you actually can use the time differently than you're used to today? I would agree to this, wouldn't you? And I give you probably something like an example how this could look like. I think you all are aware of what we call the head-up display, so the things that you see in our front screen. So in the future, if you actually push this autonomous button and the car drives by itself, you actually don't need to look at the road. And one vision we are having is, why doesn't the screen just become something like a really, really big screen that you then can use for probably making video calls, doing your emails, watching a movie, doing some shopping, I don't know what. So we are actually working not only in bringing electric cars to the road, but really bringing, I would say, autonomous driving vehicles to the road that gives you back the freedom to make the most of your time if you're driving in a car. And this is really what I think is the next exciting step when it comes to automobility. So if you ask me about iconic change, and probably in a couple of years when I'm coming back to Thailand and I once do my little thing and count the electric cars when going to the airport to here, my guess is then the number will significantly have changed. And I sincerely hope that at the next time probably I'm sitting in a car where I just push the button and actually the car then brings me autonomously here to my hotel. I can tell you exactly what date this will be, but I think this future is pretty close. And I would like to show you a little movie at the end, and it's something that probably I'm a little bit older. And if you look at small children, I think the children of today who really are grown into this change, they sometimes are much more advanced than us. And probably when they are bigger, they will only see electric cars. And for them, something like autonomous driving will be just the only future they know. And to showcase what I mean, we made a little movie, and with these words, I will then say thank you.
So how do you like your new friend?
He's kind of old school.
Thank you very much.